Hello, I'm Jim Demon with Clark County Close-Up. Thank you for meeting with us.
My pleasure.
Well, Steve, the big question, why did you not seek re-election?
Well, there were a number of reasons that went into it. First of all, it's been almost a decade of service in this position, and even in the best of times, serving as a county commissioner is a 24/7 job that is intense, and if you do it the way certainly I believe it needs to be done, you're spending a lot of your time and your energy for the betterment of the community, and it's draining. And so even in the best of times, almost 10 years of service is a lot. And I certainly didn't sign up to be here forever. And I don't think anyone would want their elected officials to be in the same position forever. And the reality is it isn't the best of times. It hasn't been the best of times. We've gone through one of the worst economic downturns in our nation's history and had to really battle through that and manage through that. We've gone through some significant changes, both politically within the organization, changes in the management within Clark County's organization, and just changes as a community. So it took a lot of soul searching to figure out what to do about that. I have a lot of love for the people who I work with and work for, and I'm incredibly grateful to them. But at the end of the day, for myself and for my family, professionally, I felt like it was time to move on. It was time to do something a little different and still find a way to serve, but do it in a different capacity.
So when is your last day?
April 11th will be my actual last day of work as a county commissioner.
Okay, and then what are you transitioning to?
So the great news for me is that shortly after I decided not to run again, and I was calling around and talking to people about it. A few of those people that I had called said, "Hey, there's a position in Ridgefield that they're hiring for a city manager that you might want to look at." And so I did. And the joy of my job now, and having grown up in the area, is I know a fair amount about Ridgefield, its background, its potential, the groundwork that has already been laid by so many people, and the foundations and structures that are just ripe for taking that next step. And so the more I looked into it, the more I looked at their challenges and their opportunities and how my skills and my experience and my background here might fit with that. It just seemed more and more like a great fit. So I applied and went through several interview panels and processes and background checks and everything else as it should be in a rigorous process, and at the end of the day was chosen unanimously by the Ridgefield City Council to serve as their Ridgefield City Manager, which is exciting for me to be able to still be in the community and working in it, and in a great space for great people and with amazing potential.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
wonderful.
You. I appreciate that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about life before being a county commissioner.
All right.
Well, why don't you give us a little bit of background? You mentioned you grew up in the area.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school?
So grew up in Ridgefield, but not in Ridgefield city limits, on the east side of I-5, right on the boundary of the Battleground and Ridgefield school districts. And my mom's still a teacher, but was a teacher then. And for my brother and I, she looked at the school districts and trying to figure out where would be the best fit and where we would be best served. And at the time, Battleground School District had passed bond levies to build Prairie High School and Pleasant Valley Elementary and Middle Schools. So as teachers, he said, all right, they're investing. That school district's investing in the kids, so that's where we went. Went to Battleground Schools, graduated from Prairie High School. Still have a lot of friends and family around here that I went to school with throughout those years. It's great. I actually have my brother-in-law, who I love dearly. He is actually married to my wife's sister, and he happens to be someone who I went to high school with. And so, yeah, it was just one of those small world things. It's not how we met or anything, but it was just one of those small world things about Clark County that I think when you're a kid, and for any of the young people that might be watching this, when you're a kid, I think sometimes you feel like how tight-knit we are as a community can feel stifling. As you get a little bit older, you recognize that close-knit nature of our community, the 2 degrees of separation between everybody as comfortable, as family, and this community is one big family, and I love that about it.
Yeah. What positions did you hold before becoming a county commissioner?
So before I was a county commissioner, I bounced around a little bit after my undergraduate education. I graduated from Linfield College with business and sociology degrees. After that, I went to work in Portland as a quantitative analyst for several years, doing statistical work in research, primarily for high-tech firms. And after a few years, realized I wanted to learn more about the rules, the structures that set in place how we grow as communities. For that, I needed to go to law school, so I did. I went to University of Oregon's law school, did a little bit of planning work in their master's program as well, but graduated with my Juris Doctorate from there. Came back up to Washington to start working on how communities are developed, and found a position in Olympia at first. For several years I worked for a smart growth advocacy group, then known as 1,000 Friends of Washington, now known as FutureWise, and had the opportunity after a few years to come on back to Clark County and take over as executive director for Friends of Clark County, which is a great group of people working to help create healthy communities. So worked with them for several years, and through my work in that and in helping to set up a wetland mitigation bank, I did a lot of work with cities and with the county on growth issues. And when a commissioner at the time, Craig Pridemore, who then went on to the state senate and is now going to be seeking election as a county commissioner in District 3, when he was leaving the county commission in 2004, to go to the state senate, people asked me if I might be interested, and as has happened this time, I looked at the opportunity and I looked at my experiences, and I thought, all right, that's a good fit and a good chance to be able to serve, and that's what I did. I stepped up and sought the appointment and was blessed enough to get it, and been serving ever since.
Wow. I ask this a lot of people when they're going to leave. Your first impressions when you came to county government, you must have had a thought of what it was going to be like.
Right.
Was it close, and how has it changed over the years?
So the biggest thing so it was close in the work that I had done. I had done a lot of work with county commissioners and county staff on growth issues. But what I didn't understand, and what the biggest surprise to me, and the thing that still to this day is amazing to me, is the breadth of work that the county organization performs for the citizens. It's not just doing long-range planning or zoning or public works. It's also community services work on mental health and chemical dependency issues. It is public health issues, getting the word out when there are epidemics that people are at risk from, or going and inspecting restaurants to make sure that that it's clean back there and people aren't getting sick from it. It is an amazingly broad set of issues that the county is tasked with performing as a regional entity, and not just in the unincorporated or rural areas, but also a lot of the services are performed within the cities themselves. So yeah, I was amazed at the breadth of the issues that we covered, and it takes a while. It has taken a lot of time to really get my brain wrapped around all of those issues and how we might be able to not only do them, but do them more efficiently.
So what were some of your proudest achievements as a county commissioner and best memories?
A lot of the best memories are just the times that you spend hashing things out to get to solutions with people. Diverse people, diverse boards, diverse citizen groups, diverse cities and partners from this side of the river and across the river in Oregon. Those times when you're sitting around the table really trying to think through solutions. Those are some of the best times. And sometimes it doesn't lead to an ultimate solution. A lot of times it does, if you're doing it in a way that really is keeping your mind open to solutions you may not have thought of. Solutions that someone else may bring to the table that are coming from a different perspective, but that can help get the issue dealt with. So those are some of the best times, was just that hashing things out with citizens and stakeholders and other electeds. Those are some great times, and I wouldn't point to any one time in particular with that. There are some great things that we've been able to accomplish. I mean, some of it is just reconfiguring how the county services are, how they are actually enacted, because we had to. We went through the Great Recession and we saw tremendous need, but we also saw a lot fewer dollars to do it with. So we had to cut 250 people and $62 million out of the budget and figure out how to still provide all the services that people need. So they were tough conversations, but in doing so, I think we were stronger coming out on the other side. I think we are more committed now to having a diversified economy. We are more committed to having efficient service provisions. So I think that those are some really good things that happen. And and there's always the fun stuff like Luke Jensen Park. Being able to go there for the first day of watching kids go play ball, and I'll always remember that. I'll always remember that first day, being there with Luke's family and being there with all of the Little League groups and seeing those kids smiling and screaming and yelling and going out onto the field and playing ball and laughing, and those kinds of days will always stick with me.
Okay. I'd like to get your impressions on the Clark County Board of Freeholders. They're preparing a home rule charter draft. I understand that the proposal could be done by May, and it'll go before voters. They are considering options like moving commissioners from 3 to 5 and making them part-time positions. Kind of what are your thoughts on these kind of proposals?
So first, I think we have a great group of freeholders. I've been very impressed, not only by the conversations they've been having and the depth of the conversations, the intelligence of the discourse, but also what they're coming up with. This is a really diverse group of freeholders from across the political spectrum, from around the county, and they're coming up with ideas that I actually am very excited about, that could help us make sure that we have better representation, that we are more represented by having 5 commissioners instead of 3. We've had 3 since we were a county of about 10,000 people. And so now my position as one of 3, I used to be representing a few thousand people. Now I'm representing the voice of about 140,000 people. So it is one of those things that, as we look at, having better representation is great. So going from that, having some separation of the powers between legislative and executive and administrative is a great thing to make sure that there is balance in what we do and stability in the services that are provided. I think that the initiative and referendum that they're talking about gives another opportunity for citizens to be involved. And they're doing it in a way that I think is responsible. They're doing things like talking about, well, if we're going to go to 5 commissioners, we should lower the overall salary. Makes sense. It makes sense that that way the citizens aren't footing the bill for increases in costs to govern, but they are getting better and more representative governance. So I really like what they're coming up with, and I look forward to seeing what happens in November with it.
Okay. Now, what is the process for selecting the replacement commissioner for your position?
Right. Well, the first step is one that I already took, which is that I needed to put in a formal letter of resignation to the Board of Commissioners. That's done, and the effective date of the resignation is April 11th. So after April 11th, then the first day after that, a 60-day period begins. And that 60-day period is a period when the party from which the leaving commissioner comes from, and in this case it's a Democrat, myself. So the Democratic Party together figures out a list of 3 nominees. And they are tasked, the precinct committee officers for this party are tasked by the Washington Constitution with doing it. This is the one constitutional task that precinct committee officers have, is to nominate a replacement for an outgoing partisan elected official of which they are the party up, that represents them. So they're coming up with a list of 3. They've actually already had those discussions about who those 3 would be. Those 3 will then be submitted to the commissioners, and actually the first step before all of that is the commissioners send a letter to the party, the party chair, and say, hey, there's an opening. We need some nominees. So they send the letter to the party sends a list of 3. The commissioners, the 2 remaining commissioners, interview the nominees, and then they choose from that list of 3, and they have 60 days to choose one of those 3. If they cannot agree on one of those 3, or if they can't agree on any of the 3, or if they just split between the 2 of them, Then ultimately, after the 60 days, it goes to the governor, and then the governor has 30 days to make a decision.
Okay. Now, you kind of did this role. Any advice? You went through this,
I
basically.
did go through it, yeah.
So any advice for this incoming commissioner?
You know, a lot of the work I did in seeking the appointment was sitting down with not only the precinct committee officers who nominated the three, but also with stakeholders, and and with the commissioners themselves. The commissioners at the time, it was Judy Stanton and Betty Sue Morris, and in this case it'll be David Medore and Tom Milkey. Commissioners have different needs and different tacks as far as how they want to talk with potential candidates. They may not want to talk with them outside of the interview process, but at the very least, what I did was get an idea of who are the stakeholders, who do I need to learn from, because ultimately, who am I going to be serving? And so I talked with people in North County, East County, Vancouver, all throughout the community to figure out, all right, what's going on? What are the needs? What are the hot button issues? And how might I be able to help with them so that I had a better sense of the work before I came in? I also, I studied the budget. I studied the foundational documents to figure out what is the lay of the land? Where are we financially and otherwise? And I remember even, the budget documents are about, half a foot thick. And I remember just poring over those to get ready so that when you get to the job, you can hit the ground running as much as possible. It's too much to expect that anyone can come in and know everything about what's going on and be able to just, to take over with no learning curve. There will be a learning curve. But for me, and I know that for the people who are looking at the appointment, the challenge is to get as far up that learning curve as you possibly can to be able to come in and immediately be able to serve.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers?
It's odd. I'm not a big. I'm not someone who when I hit a milestone birthday that I reflect and put lists together of what I've done and what I haven't in my life or anything like that. It's just not. It's not who I am. I tend to try to look forward and figure out, all right, what am I doing today? What am I doing tomorrow? How am I going to be able to keep progressing both as a human and just learning the lessons, but also as a servant, and actually finding new ways to be able to plug in and to give. And so I'm not someone that's going to spend a lot of time thinking about, all that I've done or all that I haven't, or really worrying too much about that. It feels kind of like going to your own wake,
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not really my thing. But the one thing I would say, and I've said it in every one of the things I've been at, is just I am so thankful. I am incredibly thankful. I feel like I've been given an amazing gift to be able to give back to the community that's given me so much. And for me to be able to do that, and for me to be able to spend my time and energy giving back has been a huge honor. And for the people who I've worked with and that I've worked for, I just say thanks.
Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure working with you over years. Best of luck to you.
I appreciate it.